It was the year 2010, according to the Gregorian calendar. On the planet Earth, the first humans were awakening from a 10,000-year sleep. What lay ahead of them was to see what had happened to the Earth while they slept, to understand the reasons for it, to engrave a record of what had happened into their memory as an antivirus, so that nothing like this would ever happen again. They engraved the many car accidents and wars. They engraved the stench in the air of the cities and the extensive pollution of the water. They engraved the numerous illnesses that had befallen humans' physical bodies while humanity was in this sleep state. They engraved. But for the moment, they were unable to formulate the causes. But they will be able to. Of course they'll be able to. They will return the earth to its primordial nature. A small child is walking through a glade in a heart of the vibrant Siberian taiga, smiling. Nothing frightens him. No one attacks him. On the contrary, the beasts are ready to rush to his aid at the first sign of trouble. The small person walks like a royal successor walking through his kingdom. He finds it interesting to observe the lives of the bugs, the squirrels and the birds, to study flower blossoms and see how the blades of grass and the berries taste. He'll get a bit older, then he'll perfect this beautiful world. And where is your child at this moment in time? What kind of air is he breathing? What kind of water is he drinking? How will he occupy himself when he grows up? But first things first. Chapter 1. The Beginning. I decided to start this book by reminding the reader of the events that took place in Siberia more than 15 years ago, so as to make the book easier to grasp for people who haven't read the earlier books in the Ringing Cedars of Russia series. I'll try to introduce some additional information about my first meeting with the unusual Siberian hermit, Anastasia. Anastasia lives in the heart of the Siberian taiga, in the same spot where her parents and her ancestors once lived. The distance from the spot where she lives to the nearest God-forsaken Siberian village is about 25 to 27 kilometers. There are no roads, not even any paths. You'd have a very difficult time managing a trip like that without a guide. The actual glade where she lives does not differ much from the other taiga glades. Except in that it looks somewhat cared for, and in the number of flowers. There are no structures in Anastasia's glade, no fire pits, but it's precisely the spot that Anastasia considers her family space. The first time I met Anastasia in 1994, she was 26 years old. The Siberian woman Anastasia is a very beautiful woman, even extraordinarily beautiful. The words extraordinarily beautiful are not an exaggeration. Imagine a young woman, a bit more than 170 centimeters tall, with a good figure, not waif-like like contemporary models, but genuinely well-built and lithe, as if she were a gymnast. She has regular facial features, gray-blue eyes, and hair the color of golden wheat spikes that cascades to her waist. Perhaps you could see a woman anywhere who looks like her, on the outside, but I don't think you'd ever come across the other special qualities deep inside her that make the taiga-dwelling Anastasia extraordinarily beautiful. Everything about her external appearance speaks of ideal health. It comes through in the fluidity and lightness of her gestures, in the springy way she walks, as if she were flying. You get the impression that her body contains within it some kind of otherworldly energy whose abundance warms the surrounding space with invisible rays. Your body warms up slightly when Anastasia looks at you, and by squinting at you with some kind of special gaze, she can heat up your body to such an extent at a distance that your whole body begins to sweat, especially around the feet. Toxins leave the body, and afterwards you feel significantly better. In general, I surmise that Anastasia's knowledge of the properties of the taiga plants and some of the internal energy and some kind of internal energy enable her to cure a person of absolutely any illness. At least she cured my ulcer with her gaze in the course of a few minutes. However, she categorically refused to do any subsequent healing. Illness is a serious conversation between God and man, says Anastasia. Through this pain, which is both yours and his at the same time, he is letting you know that you're living in some unacceptable way. Change the way you live, and the pain will pass. The illness will recede. Anastasia has one extraordinary ability. When she's telling a story about something, pictures of the events she's narrating arise in the listener's consciousness or in actual space, and the images she shows are much more picture perfect than any modern television picture. They are three-dimensional, complete with smells and sounds of the time that she's describing. It's quite possible that at one time many people possessed these capabilities, if you bear in mind that in our technocratic time, man has not invented anything that wouldn't have existed in nature, then it's possible that something perfectly analogous to our modern television and telephone also existed in early human civilization. Anastasia has shown me pictures from the lives of people of a variety of periods, starting from the very creation of the world. Pretty much all of the events she shows are connected with her ancestors. If you were to try to characterize Anastasia's capabilities in one phrase, here's what you could say. The taiga dweller Anastasia preserves the experiences and emotions of the members of her extended family, starting with the creation of the very first human in her genetic memory, and she is able to call them up at will. She can also model pictures from the lives of people in the future. Anastasia's life in the Siberian taiga differs significantly from the lives of people in modern cities, so that you'll be able to understand the conditions in which she lives out her life. I have to say a few words about what the Siberian taiga is. It's Russia's largest expanse of open land, ancient and snow-covered. In European Russia, it extends for 800 kilometers, while in West and Eastern Siberia, it stretches out for 2,150 kilometers. As you can see, this is an impressive landmass. Today, the taiga is considered the Earth's lungs, and rightly so. It produces the majority of free oxygen. You have to bear in mind that the taiga zones began forming even before the onset of the glaciers. So by studying life in today's taiga zone, we can learn about life on the planet Earth before the Ice Age. Remains of a well-preserved baby mammoth, now kept in the Zoological Museum in St. Petersburg, were discovered in the permafrost. It's hard for us to get a good idea of the animal world in taiga zones before the Ice Age. In today's taiga, lynxes, wolverines, chipmunks, sables, squirrels, bears, foxes, and wolves are numerous and widespread. The ungulates. The ungulates you'll encounter include noble and northern deer, elk, and roe deer. There are numerous rodents, shrews, and mice. Among birds, wood grouse, hazel grouse, nutcrackers, and crossbills are ubiquitous. During the winter, the great majority of animals settle into anabiosis, or hibernation. This state of living organisms has been studied by scientists and is generating greater and greater interest among those who study outer space. As far as the planet world is concerned, various types of bushes grow in the taiga: juniper, honeysuckle, currant, and willow, and others. You find bilberries, cowberries, cranberry, and cloudberries, all with marvelous vitamin content. Among grasses suitable for consumption, sourgrass, wintergreen, and ferns predominate. You'll find majestic trees reaching 40 meters in height: spruce, fir, larch, pine, and a tree with unique qualities, the cedar, which scientists sometimes call cedar pine. I'll say right off that, in my opinion, they really shouldn't call it that at all. But what can you do? Let science focus on the pine they mistakenly call a cedar. I'm going to talk about the incomparable Siberian cedar. Why is it incomparable? Because the cedar gives unique fruits, cedar nuts, and deserves its own separate name. The quality of the fruit of the Siberian cedar, these cedar nuts, greatly surpasses that of the nuts of cedars in other climate zones on the planet. Way back in 1792, the academic Pallas wrote about this in a letter to the Russian Empress Catherine the Great. Cedarwood possesses special phytocidal properties even once it's been cut, so a moth will never take up residence in the closet made of cedar. In the Old Testament's King Solomon, who also seems to have known cedar's mysterious properties, built a temple out of it, having given away several entire cities of his kingdom in exchange for certain specially chosen cedars. But the priests were unable to perform services in the temple because a cloud formed inside it. 3 Kings 8:11. After having pored over a multitude of sources that talk about the Siberian cedar, I'm inclined to suggest, and not without basis, that the cedar is a representative of the pre-Ice Age plant world, that it may be an envoy to us from a different, more developed civilization in the biological sense. How was it able to survive the planetary catastrophe and come to life anew in our world? Cedar seeds can survive frost and are able to hold out for an extended period of time so that they can come up during more favorable climatic conditions and adapt to the new environment. This adaptation continues up to the present day. What is so unique about the fruit of a cedar? Why is it that today we can state with certainty that they are the most ecologically pure and healing food product of our time? The cedar nut kernel contains the entire necessary complex of vitamins. Scientists from University of Tomsk who have studied the properties of cedar oil added it to the diet of people who had served as responders to the accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and who were suffering from radiation poisoning. The results of the experiment showed that the test subjects' immunity began to increase. There are no counterindications for the use of cedar oil. Even pregnant women and nursing mothers can use it. There's one other mysterious fact about the cedar nut kernel. During periods when cedars do not bear fruit, the females of certain fur-bearing animals don't allow males to come near them and don't conceive. It's still unclear how cedars let the animals know that they won't bear fruit in a given year. After all, the animals mate in the spring, but cedar fruits ripen only in the very late fall. It's very difficult to tell, just by looking at a cedar tree, that it's not going to give fruit. Bear fruit. There are a great many other plants in the taiga. For the entire taiga animal world to feed on. Similar taiga-dwelling animals in Russia's central zone, get along entirely without cedar nuts. So why do females who have fed on cedar nuts consider it impossible to conceive and bear young without its food? It's been noted that the fur of taiga-dwelling animals, particularly those from regions where cedars grow, is of much higher quality than the fur of all other animals. No matter how scientists and specialists fine-tune the diet of the animals they're raising on fur farms, they cannot manage to achieve fur of anywhere near the same quality. The fur of the Siberian sable from regions where cedars grow has always been the highest quality fur in the world. It's well known that the condition of fur-bearing animals' fur reflects the condition of their organism as a whole. So if their condition improves when they consume cedar nut kernels, then the same should be true for humans, especially pregnant women. Our women might not be getting enough high-quality food products to enable them to bear healthy fetuses, and this situation can't help but degrade society. The fruit of the Siberian cedar disproves scientists' opinion that agriculture is the great achievement of humans, evidence of their development. I think that agriculture came into being because human civilization lost its knowledge of nature, and because people's way of life changed. As a result, man began sweating in the fields to get his daily bread. You can draw your own conclusions. Let us imagine that there are 2 fruit-bearing cedar trees growing on a parcel of land where a family of 3 people lives. You can absolutely be certain that the family that owns the parcel of land where the 2 cedars grow will never grow hungry, even in the year with the worst harvests. And it isn't just that they won't go hungry, won't live from hand to mouth, they will feed on the best, most refined food there is. 1 cedar alone is capable of producing, in 1 year, up to a ton of cedar nuts that can be used as food once they're shelled. But that's not all, not by any means. You can extract cedar milk from the kernel of a cedar nut, which is not only suitable for human consumption, but which you can also successfully feed to infants. You can get world-class cedar oil from the kernels, which you can add to salads and other dishes and also use medicinally. After you express the oil from the cedar nut kernels, you are left with an oil cake, which you can use to make excellent baked goods, bread, cookies, pastries, or crepes. The cedar also gives us a sap that's recognized by official and folk medicine alike as a medicinal and prophylactic substance. The Siberian cedar does not require any care at all by humans. You don't need to fertilize it or till around it. You don't even need to plant it. Its seeds are planted in the earth by a little bird called the Eurasian nutcracker. It starts to become clear why it is that our ancient ancestors knew nothing about agriculture. It's just because they knew much, much more. Maybe someone will say, well, the cedar bears fruit only once in 2 years, and if the barren year comes along in the same year as the bad harvest, then how can a cedar remedy the situation? I'll tell you, it's true that cedars bear fruit once every 2 years, sometimes even less frequently, but its unique nuts can last from 9 to 11 years if you don't remove them from the cone. Of course, nothing is quite this simple today in our real life. The cedar has a hard time taking root near cities. It can't tolerate ecologically polluted zones, but there are also encouraging outcomes. Many sources indicate that the cedar responds to human emotions, that it can take energy from humans and, having increased it, give it back. I had the chance to convince myself of this personally. 7 years ago, 25 taiga cedar seedlings were sent to me. Together with the residents of the 5-story building where my apartment is located, I planted these seedlings in the little wooded area bordering the building. I planted 3 of them along the edge of the plot of my country house. Before long, somebody dug up the cedars we'd planted in the wooded area. I wasn't too terribly upset by this. I figured that if somebody dug them up, it meant that people knew about their properties and would most likely plant them somewhere else and take good care of them. but one seedling still remained there. It had been planted near the brick wall of the garages located in the front of the building. The soil there was so far from fertile. For the most part, it was construction refuse covered over with a thin layer of fertile dirt. Nonetheless, the cedar took root and is still growing today. As far as its rate of growth and how smooth its trunk is, it's quite different from the cedars I planted at my country house. It's about twice as tall. I got to thinking about why that would be, and I began to notice that when some people in the city come out onto their balconies, they often look at the cedar, and sometimes they remark, "What a beautiful tree we have." And I too, when I walk or drive by, happily admire it. In this way, the cedar growing by the garages receives human attention and strives to be worthy of it. Now, especially since the Ringing Cedars of Russia series of books started coming out, there are many companies that put out cedar products, including cedar oil. I also asked my daughter and her husband to set up cedar oil production. I told them about the ancient technique that I had learned from Anastasia. Polina's husband, Sergei, made every possible effort to work in accord with both ancient techniques and today's requirements for producing food products. We arranged for the production to take place at a medications factory under the control of experienced specialists. The expression was carried out using the cold pressing method, which is supposed to preserve the greatest amount of the oil's beneficial substances, and using wooden blocks. It was necessary to do this because the cedar nut kernel and the oil contain the entire periodic table, and certain elements can oxidize if they come in contact with metal. In addition, only glass containers were used during the bottling. The oil we ended up with may also have been better quality than if we had produced it using other methods such as hot pressing. However, it differed from the cedar oil I'd tried in the taiga. I got the impression that it contained less life force than the taiga cedar oil. I will not go into detail about our extensive attempts to find the reason for the differences. I will start by saying that we saw a change in quality as soon as we moved the whole production process from a nut storage up to the pressing of the oil and its packaging to a village out in the taiga 120 kilometers outside the city. It turns out that you can't just produce a high-quality oil in an urban setting, even at a medications factory. At every stage of production, the kernel and oil come into contact with the air, and the big city air is very different from air in the taiga, which is full of phytoncides. As a result of moving production, the products of this small company, which was perhaps not very technically well equipped according to today's standards, were of higher quality than those produced by all other companies, not only in our country, I think, but in the world. I'm happy to have played even a small role in the appearance of this unique product, cedar oil. I think that this taiga company is really the only one that produces actual cedar oil because the others produce the oil of the cedar pine. A great many products in the world are marketed as ecologically pure, but I immediately ask myself where these products are from. Where were they grown? Can you really call any product ecologically pure at all if its raw materials are grown and produced in an area surrounded by highways or big and small cities? I don't think any product produced in areas like that can be ecologically pure, even if no toxic chemicals, pesticides, or fertilizers are used to grow it. The cedar grows deep in the Siberian taiga, hundreds and thousands of kilometers from large cities. There are no highways there. You can only ship this unique product out by river. Of course, our civilization's filth can also end up there, but everything in the world is relative. And compared to giant cities, the air and water in the taiga really are immeasurably cleaner. and no one is pouring any poisons into the ground. And so I think that there is no more pure, beneficial, or healing product in the world than cedar nut kernel oil and the products made from it. In telling about the Siberian taiga, I've given special attention to the cedar, but in the taiga region there are also many other food products that are of much higher quality than those we're already aware of. For example, cranberries, raspberries, cloudberries, currants, and mushrooms. And to answer the question, what does Anastasia eat out there in the taiga? I can tell you that she eats world-class, ecologically pure food of a type that you cannot possibly buy, not even for $1 million. Back in my first book, I described how Anastasia lives out in the taiga and how astonished I was by her way of life. Now that so many years have passed since we first met, in thinking about her, I've come to the conclusion that the way people live in today's giant cities looks unnatural and absurd if you juxtapose it with Anastasia's life out in nature. At first glance, it seems extraordinary, the way the animals bring food to Anastasia when she gives them a certain signal. But even a hunting dog today will bring prey to its master. A falcon released to hunt also turns prey over to its master. Goats and cows in a village farm are happy to feed their owners by giving them milk. The wild animals inhabiting the area around the glade where Anastasia lives mark their territory, and within this territory they consider a person something like a pack leader. I think that over the generations they were trained by Anastasia's forebears, and they themselves trained their offspring. Anastasia actually eats very little. She never makes a fetish out of food. Many people have been asking recently about how Anastasia makes it through the severe Siberian winter, when the temperature reaches 35 to 40 degrees below zero, if she doesn't have any warm clothing or a heated dwelling. I'll start by saying that if the air temperature out in the open gets down to minus 30, it's always significantly warmer in the taiga, and there can be up to a 10-degree difference in temperature. Anastasia has dugouts at various locations in the taiga. The main one, where I myself have had occasion to pass the night more than once, consists of a spot hollowed out in the ground, about 2.5 meters long, 2 meters wide, and about 2 meters high. The entrance to the dugout is a narrow, about 60-centimeter wide, and 1.5 meters high. The entrance is covered with cedar branches. The walls and ceilings of the taiga bedroom are woven of vines with bunches of dried grasses and taiga flowers stuffed into them. The floor has been carpeted with dry hay. It's very comfortable sleeping in that kind of bedroom in the summer. No sounds penetrate it, to say nothing at all of those radio and electrical emissions that a person living in a multi-story building is subjected to. In the late fall, Anastasia fills the entire area of her bedroom with dry hay and enters into an extended sleep, similar to the state scientists call anabiosis. Anabiosis, as modern science explains it, is a state in which all of a living being's vital processes, including metabolism, slow down to such an extent that there are no visible signs of life. Scientists have been focusing on this unique biological phenomenon as they develop plans for extended space travel. What primarily attracts them is the fact that creatures in an anabiotic state or hibernation state use much less oxygen and do not need food. It has been proven that their resistance to negative environmental factors increases. So, for example, it's been shown that infectious diseases don't develop in such animals, even when they're artificially infected, and that many poisons which would be fatal for their organism under normal circumstances are entirely harmless to them when they are hibernating or in an antibiotic state. It's even been proven that if you subject such animals to a fatal dose of ionizing radiation, they will still survive, since their metabolism has greatly decelerated. And that once they awaken, their vital functions resume entirely normally. But here's what's interesting. If a person who is a thinking being, falls into a deep sleep in the winter, then what happens to his soul during this period? I haven't come across any hypotheses at all about this in scientific writings, but it is an extremely interesting question. One day I too had an occasion to partially experience the unusual state of anabiosis for myself. This happened when I was in the taiga in the late fall, where Anastasia lives. The days at that time of year are very short. When it began to get dark, Anastasia suggested I take a rest. I immediately agreed. The accumulated fatigue of city life and my taxing journey through the taiga were already driving me toward sleep. This time the dugout was full of more hay than usual. Since I know you don't get cold sleeping in hay even when it's below zero, I stripped down to my underwear and lay down, putting my jacket beneath my head. It's already time for you to be waking up, Vladimir, Anastasia said. Waking. Uh-oh, am I missing a page? There's no way to tell. Waking me. I didn't see the me at the bottom of that page. I felt her massaging my right hand, and I looked toward the entrance of the dugout. Its opening was barely visible. That meant the sun hadn't yet come up. Why do I need to wake up? The dawn is just breaking. It's the third dawn since you went to sleep that's breaking, Vladimir. Should you not wake up, your sleep might continue for several months and even years. Your soul, since it won't need to worry about keeping your body safe, will want to have a rest and wander around other worlds in the universe. No one would be able to bring it back, until it decides on its own that it wants to come back. So that means it wasn't with me while I was sleeping? It was with you, Vladimir, right alongside you. It was waiting for your sleep to become more even and deeper, and then it would have been able to take its leave. But I decided to wake you. But why doesn't your soul leave when you fall into a deep sleep? My soul leaves too, but it always comes back right on time. After all, I do not torment it. What do you mean? You mean I torment my soul? Vladimir, every person who falls prey to harmful habits and thought patterns, who consumes harmful food, brings torment first and foremost to their soul. What importance does food have for the soul? What? Does it also consume the food a person eats? The soul does not feed on material food, Vladimir, but it is able to see, hear, and actualize itself only through your body. If the body is unhealthy, for example, if a person is drunk and his body is helpless, then the soul, as if it were bound, has no way of manifesting and actualizing itself. It can only feel, only weep over the helpless body that has been destroyed by the harmful drink. It can only attempt to warm damaged. This book was translated by someone different, and there's a lot of typos, so I'm doing my best here. It can only attempt to warm a damaged organ of the body, and it will expend a colossal amount of energy as it does so. When the soul's energy is exhausted, it becomes powerless and leaves the human body. The body dies. Yes, Anastasia, what you said about the soul is interesting, and it seems accurate, because there's a folk saying, when a person dies, they say he gave up his soul to God. What we get in your interpretation is that the soul ran out of strength. I wonder, does my soul still have strength left? Since it came back, that means your soul still has strength, Vladimir. But please, try not to torment it. I'll try, but wait, doesn't a person's soul get a rest when he's sleeping? The soul is energy, Vladimir, a living energy complex. Energy does not need rest. But what do you think, Anastasia? Where does the soul go off to during sleep? It can go off into other dimensions, soar among the planets of the universe. And if the person wishes it to do so, it can gather information he needs. For example, if the person wants to learn something about the past or the future, he can ask his soul, as he falls asleep, to visit the time and place that interests him, and the soul will fulfill his wish. But if the person sleeps an ordinary sleep that is not sufficiently peaceful, and if the environment is not ideal, then the soul cannot go off anywhere. It has to guard his body. From whom? From all manner of hostile influences. You sleep in your apartment, Vladimir, and its walls are filled to bursting with electrical wires, and the wires give off radiation that adversely affects people. Sounds of the artificial world force their way in through the glass. The air in the apartment is not entirely healthy to breathe. Your soul cannot leave you alone. It has to be able to wake you in the case of a critical situation. I get it, Anastasia. This dugout I slept in is actually a great deal more comfortable than the most elegant bedrooms in today's hotels and apartments. It's like some kind of hypobaric chamber. The air here is ideal and there are no harmful rays or noise. The temperature is stable, and so I sleep much better in it than I do in my own apartment. I understand that, and I've experienced it for myself, but I don't get why it is, when you fall asleep for a long time, that it doesn't bother your soul that your body is resting in a dugout where the entrance isn't even shut up. And if there's some danger, say there are some intruders, there won't be anybody to wake it up. Vladimir, anytime anyone makes the slightest attempt to approach the glade that we are in, no matter what their intentions, the entire space within a radius of 3 kilometers is put on its guard. The animals, birds, and plants begin sounding the alarm. Those who are approaching will be gripped by terror, and if they succeed in overcoming it and aren't thrown off course, then the space, by means of the animals, will wake the body and call the soul back. And what about in the winter when everything's asleep? Not everything is asleep in the winter. Besides, in the winter, it is easier for those who are awake to keep watch over what is going on. I don't understand everything Anastasia said about the soul during her winter sleep period, but I have had occasion to see for myself the way the wild animals and birds bring Anastasia troubling or happy news. Now that I'm familiar with the way Anastasia thinks of sleep, I can draw the following conclusion. Modern man, and mankind as a whole, don't have any opportunity to get enough good sleep. Besides the fact that modern bedrooms can't measure up to the natural one, we have to add one more factor that's also of some importance. Modern man is continually caught up in a whirlwind of everyday worldly concerns, and he often keeps on thinking about them as he falls asleep. And if that's the case, then the question arises of how man is using the energy of his soul, which is capable of learning about other worlds when a person is sleeping and bringing him information about them when he wakes. Perhaps we need to construct our bedrooms so that no random sounds will penetrate it, and so that no wires and no telephones are in it. It's possible for us to achieve this. It's more complicated to manage the necessary air quality. And so Anastasia, the hermit of the Siberian taiga, has become the heroine of the Ringing Cedars of Russia book series. She has borne me a son and a daughter. She now lives in the taiga, and in my heart, and in the image of the heroine of my books. I don't think that I've been able to do this amazing woman's beauty, her intelligence, and her extraordinary capabilities justice in my descriptions. Really, it's probably not even possible to do this using ordinary language. Even now, I only sometimes see Anastasia as someone who is close to me, as a loved one. More often I see her as unattainable and mysterious, as someone who possesses inexplicable strength of spirit that she can use to create the future. Her characterization of our modern-day reality and her story, more precisely the image she has created of the beautiful future of Russia and the whole Earth, have given birth to a beautiful phenomenon in this society, or in society. Without waiting for decrees to be handed down from on high, or for our government financing, tens of thousands of people have independently set about turning this image created by Anastasia into actual reality. You can understand the main idea for building our future country by reading the books in order. But if I were to try to briefly, not in its entirety, present the idea that is helping these positive transformations take place, I would characterize it using the following words. Anastasia thinks that every family should have its own plot of land that is no less than 1 hectare in size. 1 hectare is 2.5 acres. The family needs to transform this plot, which the Taiga hermit calls a family homestead or a kin's domain, into a heavenly living oasis that can provide for all of man's material needs. The external appearance of the person's living creation and the way the Creator himself lives on it are indicators of the person's spiritual makeup. She considers it unacceptable to bury family members in a cemetery. They must be buried only on the kin's domains. Then the souls of the relatives who have passed on will not suffer, because their bodies seem to have been tossed into some deep hole in a cemetery far away from their loved ones. People who are buried on the kin's domain will, with their spirit, help and protect those living on it. Cemeteries analogous to our modern ones did exist back in antiquity too, but they were intended for animals that dropped dead from disease, criminals with no family, and warriors who died in a foreign land. Anastasia has told us how to set up our own family homestead or kin's domain so that we can free ourselves from physical ailments with its help. She has talked in relatively great detail about the ancient and very lovely rite of marriage that helped the newlyweds, along with the power of their thought, create the design for their future kin's domain, and about how at the moment of marriage, with the participation of the parents, friends, and relatives, what they had conceived and thought would materialize in the space of several minutes. I think that this rite is one of the greatest discoveries of our millennium. After all, by using it, newlyweds even today can acquire a house, a garden, and a family homestead right during their wedding. Anastasia also asserts that for newlyweds who create their kin's domain in this way, love never fades, but actually grows stronger over the years. And she explains why this happens. When a husband looks at his wife, he subconsciously associates her with his glorious homestead too, and also with his child, who must also be born on the domain. And one can believe in this. After all, the very best place on earth for each person is always his own small motherland. His child will always be the most beautiful and the best of all children. And Anastasia also asserts that if all people, or the majority of them, begin consciously creating their own family homesteads or kin's domains and turning them into heavenly oases, then the whole earth will be transformed. Natural disasters and wars will not occur on the earth. man's inner spiritual world will change, and new knowledge and capabilities will open up to him. Man will be able to create beautiful worlds resembling the earthly world on other planets. She considers today's technocratic method of exploring space and other planets a dead end, harmful for the planet Earth and the people living on it. The sensible way to explore the planets is through psychoteleportation. But if people are able to do this, they first have to demonstrate their ability to develop the Earth and express their spirituality in their way of life, not in words. Official critics might respond to the subjects of the books and to the Taiga Hermit's statements in a number of ways, but their opinions aren't really so very important. The people, the most important critics, have already expressed their approval in tens of thousands of letters and hundreds of thousands of emails. They've expressed it not only in words, but in concrete actions too, in the hundreds of large and small settlements that have arisen and continue to arise throughout all of Russia are confirmation of this. Now here's where a riddle arises, one that's as yet insoluble and cryptic. If a mass movement has been set in motion solely by the statements of a Taiga hermit that have been introduced in books, what kind of power lies behind her phrases? Perhaps they are constructed in such a way that the letters combine into some kind of code. Perhaps a certain rhythm of her phrases has significance. Anastasia actually tries to adopt the speaking mannerisms of those she's talking with, to use his lexicon in a way of constructing phrases, but at certain moments she'll suddenly begin speaking in some different kind of language that's emphatic and flowing and rhythmical. She pronounces each letter of the phrase she utters very precisely, and you clearly sense an extraordinary energy behind each sound. And then you remember that she's said what she has said verbatim, as if there's some recorder at work in your brain. And that's not all. Living pictures appear before the listeners, and the subconscious grasps the meaning of what's been said. By way of example, I'll give you an excerpt from Anastasia's retelling of a conversation between God and the first man from the book Co-Creation. Where is the edge of the universe? What will I do when I come to it? When I have filled everything with myself, when I create that which I have thought? A man of the Wellspring people asks God, and he receives this answer. My son, the universe is a thought. A dream was born of the thought, and it is partially visible as matter. When you come to the edge of everything, a new beginning and continuation shall your thought discover. Out of nothing will arise the new beautiful birth of you, and of the aspiration reflecting in itself your soul and your dream. My son, you are endless. You are eternal. Your creating dreams are within you. There are several theories regarding Anastasia's abilities. I'll share mine with you too. Anastasia's abilities, which seem extraordinary at first glance, were actually inherent in all or the majority of the Wellspring people. The effect the Taiga Hermit's statements have had on many people's actions is due not to some mystical force, but rather to people's very own ability to embrace them with their heart and soul. You get the impression that some memory has been preserved in modern day people's genes, or in their subconscious, a memory of the way individual families and human society as a whole lived, starting back in the time of the Wellspring people, when man still understood how to communicate directly with God. This way of life, the Wellsprings people's, is significantly more advanced than today's. Maybe it's from those times when people still knew what heaven was, but I don't think these people's actions were connected to any specific religion. All the domains that the readers of the books are building turn out differently from each other. The houses they put up don't just differ in their external appearance. Some are two-story wooden houses, while others are one-story wattle and daub affairs. And the gardens, living fences, and ponds are also constructed differently. It's common knowledge that religious ritual requires all its participants to strictly observe standardized ways of acting and speaking. But here we clearly see each individual's personal creativity in the way that they realize this beautiful idea. If people are thankful to Anastasia for anything, it's probably for the fact that she has awakened within their souls the aspirations of a human creator.